Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 6 of Expressly Speaking, the Industry Podcast. I'm joined today by my co host, Jim Smith,
Good day,
National
all.
Sales Director at the Steel City Corp in Ashland, Ohio. I'm Aaron Katarik. I'm the Senior Vice President of Audience and Operations here at Oahu Publications in Honolulu. And today we're joined by Alan Fisco, the President of the Seattle Times. We'll get to Alan here in a bit. If you've watched any of our episodes 1 through 5, you know that Jim and I have a special Zoom background that has played a great significance in our careers. And we're going to start with Jim. He looks like he's in front of a stadium, maybe First Energy.
I am in front of First Energy Stadium, just across the way from Al Lerner Way. So, First Energy Stadium is the home of the Cleveland Browns, and it has a bit of a near and dear place in my heart because for 5 years I worked for the Cleveland Browns in their guest services and guest relations department. It was a fantastic experience because you can't imagine if you have 63,000 in a building, disguised as 22,000, by the way, in a building, you come up with 63,000 different incidents and occurrences that you're going to learn to manage, along with managing a team of 10 employees who have to deal with that week in and week out. Absolutely fantastic experience. Over the 5 years I was there, they won a total of 15 games. 7 of those games were in one season. So I was there for the 1 in 32 experience over 2 seasons, and that brings a whole different amount of, let's say, topics from fans. That's for sure. But I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed. You go to a game. We've all been to a game. We've all been to a stadium, and there's a whole world underneath that stadium that's occurring, and the operations of an NFL Sunday are just amazing because obviously it's not just Sunday. So I was privy to the 3 or 4 day schedule in advance of a game and how equipment was coming in and how personalities were coming in. It was just a great all around experience. So it meant a lot to me. And it has a little bit of a memory for our guest today, who has a little bit of Cleveland in his blood as well. First Energy Stadium, home of the Cleveland Browns.
Go
Well,
Browns. They won last week or
Indeed.
yesterday. Yeah.
Indeed.
hey, they're in a playoff position right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, not to be the guy from Northeast Ohio, but I can tell you last week we were on a bye, and yesterday we had a pretty terrible windstorm come through here. So the reality was I didn't have to watch him for 2 weeks in a row because I lost power yesterday.
Well, thank you, Jim. As you can see, I am on Midland Avenue in Lexington, Kentucky, in front of the Herald Leader building, which is also across from Thoroughbred Park. So I was fortunate enough to work at the Herald Leader about 6 years ago for a couple of years. And for those that don't know, I'm a huge University of Kentucky basketball fan. And back in the mid 90s, I was working for Thompson Newspapers, now defunct, but our corporate circulation vice president was Gail Pryor, a graduate of the University of Kentucky. He's also a huge Wildcat basketball fan. And he gave me a unique opportunity back in 1996. He said, Aaron, I'm going to send you to the Lexington Herald Leader to meet with their wonderful circulation team, Greg Greer, Mike Turner, Richard Morgan. So that was my first opportunity ever going to Lexington. And it was a place that I always wanted to work at my entire career because I am a Wildcat fan. And I thought if I could work there, I could work at this wonderful award-winning newspaper and enjoy Wildcat basketball games at the same time. So for a little bit of selfish reasons. But I met Richard Morgan in 1996, and almost 20 years later, we ended up working together. And it's just a wonderful award-winning newspaper. Lexington's a wonderful city, and I really enjoyed my time there. So that's why I selected the Herald Leader in Lexington, Kentucky.
I had the opportunity to work with Richard Morgan for nearly 30 years here at Steel City Corporation. You're right, heck of a guy.
Absolutely. Well, let's get to our guest, Jim, Alan Fisco, who's the president of the Seattle Times, also president of America's Newspapers. So I'd like to talk to Alan a little bit about that organization too
Absolutely.
later in the podcast. You know, Jim Allen's one of those guys that we love because he's a former circulator who's climbed the ranks. And I love
Absolutely.
seeing those circulators and those audience execs move up the line to become president, publisher, CEO. So, you know, Alan's background, he worked in Eugene, he worked in Everett, Corvallis. So he's a PNW guy, through and through, a graduate of the University of Washington. So Alan, welcome to Expressly Speaking.
Well, thanks for having me. Yes, a Pacific Northwest guy, but a native Clevelander. So I have struggled to watch the Browns and the Indians for decades. So it was nice to see them win a game yesterday.
Well, this is our very first all Midwest panel. We have 2 Ohioans and a cheesehead. So it's good to have the
It's going to
Midwest.
be a good one.
Yeah, well represented. So what's going on with America's Newspapers? Now that you're president, can you kind of walk us through your vision for the organization or your upcoming plans? You know, just
Yeah.
give us a little 100,000-foot level.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, America's Newspapers is a new organization that was created out of the merger of the Inland Press Association and SNPA, Southern Newspaper Publisher Association. The merger went through about a year ago. So we literally, we were probably 3 months into the new organization when COVID hit. You know, quick pivots, just like all of us had to do at our newspapers, we've had to do the exact same thing at America's Newspapers. So we have really focused this past year, and will continue to do so, on training opportunities for our members. And frankly, we opened it up to even non-members this year as well. Through a host of webinars, we have served over 11,000 people participating this year so far. So it's been pretty amazing. We created an advertising network where people can buy ads that will run in America's Newspaper members' newspapers in print. There's a lot of great things happening there. Marketing campaigns that are available for not only America's Newspapers members, but non-members as well. And then we've been really involved in some of the legislative work to try to get some support for newspapers in general. You know, some of us got the PPP loans, and a lot of newspapers didn't qualify because of their ownership structures. So we've been working hard with legislators to drum up support for the newspaper business. And we've got an active bill coming now, the HR, I think it's 7640. I should know the numbers. You know, we've got 76, I think it is 76 Congress people who have signed on for support of that.
You know, I did notice that, and your memory's good. I found that as HR 7640. Nice work. And that's
Thank
the
you.
local journalism sustainability we're talking about, right?
Yes, yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? We're kind of
Sure.
getting weeds here, but yeah, that'd be great to hear more.
Yeah, there's 3 components of the bill. The first component is a tax credit for people who subscribe to newspapers as well as support nonprofit journalism organizations. And it's up to, I think, $250 a year tax credit to support, or again, to support that subscriptions. The second component is a support for newsrooms. It's based on how many people you have in your newsroom, and it's $15,000, I believe, in year number 1, which is a refundable tax credit. So these would be dollars that come right into the newspapers based on the size of your newsroom staff. And then the third component is a tax credit for local advertisers who choose to advertise with their local media, newspapers, as well as broadcast for that component. So those are the 3 things. The really nice thing about this bill is it's not just a one-time stimulus. It is over a 5-year runway. So in year 1, you get more dollars for support of your newsrooms that you would get in years 2 through 5. But the ideal thing here is that it gives us an opportunity. Many of us are in the middle. I think, you know, with the pandemic, it's accelerated the middle of that digital transformation. And this bill is really designed to help us kind of get over that hump with, a decent runway here.
So in terms of not only America's newspapers, but other industry organizations, what do you envision the future to look like in terms of meeting with your membership? Are we going to go back to face-to-face events? Are we moving or transitioning to a more virtual world with these events? And or do you see consolidation of these organizations in order for these fine organizations to just stay alive and sustain themselves?
Yeah, I'll answer the last one first. I do see more consolidation coming, and it's nice to see. I think you look at, I'm so familiar with the NICE, and that was really kind of dying, frankly, because there's
Yeah.
hang on, pardon me, guys. There are so few. You got a circulation person who oversees 8 newspapers. It's kind of hard for them to participate. So I'd really like to see what they've done with CWCMA, and I can't remember what the new organization's even called now.
The Great Western Audience Alliance.
Yeah, the Great Western Audience Alliance. So I think that's an example, and I see further consolidation happening there. And I forgot what your other questions were. Sorry, Aaron.
Are we going to meet virtually, or is there going to be some face-to-face, meetings? You think that's still in the cards?
We had our first, America's Newspapers had its first virtual conference, Pivot 2020, just a few weeks ago. And we all kind of went into it not knowing what to expect, and I think it went off really well. And it's interesting. The participation was high. The great thing about it is, our overhead costs are a fraction of what it costs to put on an event in person. And so when we thought we were going to get really hit from a financial standpoint, it really didn't turn out that way. So I think we'll continue to see, a large amount of people participating virtually, even post-pandemic. It's so much more efficient. And I get that, yeah, you don't get the personal relationships. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to be problematic for all of us. But, we're hoping that we can have an in-person, or at least a much smaller conference next fall in Colorado Springs. But as we're looking at it now, probably the majority of that event would be virtual, with just a small gathering of maybe some of the family newspapers or even just the board members. So I think the virtual thing is here to stay, to be honest with you.
Yeah. My hope is that it's a hybrid where we still can have some face-to-face events, because I think the business partners really appreciate that up close and personal FaceTime. And I know Jim and we've talked about this before. Some of the best ideas that we've ever gotten have been at the bar or in right? Having
Yeah.
a cocktail with your
Right.
peers
It's a fine line where that creativity goes a little sideways, though. But yeah, probably about my third beer. The first two, I'm much more creative. But I think that's the thing I fear the most, really. And I think back to my career. It's like, hell, I've got people that I've been friends with now for 30 plus years. Chris Blazer, my best friend, he married my wife and I. He was at the Tri-City Herald. I met him at the NICE conferences. So
Yep.
I would hate to see it go full virtual, because I think you really lose all of those personal relationships, get that much more difficult.
Well, it's funny. I was going to go back in the Wayback Machine for a minute here too and talk about that. I mean, those were valuable times. I mean, when I thought about us talking to you today, in 1991 was my first NICE out in the Pacific Northwest, and I started just names rattling off the top of my head. The Pat Marltons, the Janet Jones, the Steve Shirkeys, Blazer, all these guys. So how critical do you value that, Alan? I mean, is not only just the networking then, but how it propelled you, to a very high level position in this industry.
Well, it's been invaluable to me. Over the course of the years, you get those relationships with people, and you have an issue, you have a problem, you want something to talk about. They're going to pick up the phone because they know you, or answer your email or whatever it is, or answer your Zoom call these days. But you also, I don't want it to sound, you have a high level of trust with people that that you've come to respect. And all of those relationships have just, each one of them has helped me get to where I'm at. And, I hope that, people look at relationships that they have with me and can think that somehow I've helped them as well. So invaluable. And that's why I really hope these associations, I think there will be fewer of them, but it's really important to maintain them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jim, here's a trivia question for you.
Uh-oh.
So besides our circulation backgrounds, what do Alan and I have in common with one another?
Oh, okay. Let me take a minute. Now, Alan, I saw spent some time at the College of Worcester, and I believe you went to Marion. Is that the school you went to?
That's correct.
I'm going to say that those two teams had. This is my wild guess that though there's some competition between the College of Worcester and Marion.
You are incorrect. I'll let Alan answer this. Bingo. Oh, Rain, is that Rubens? I love
Rubens.
Rubens.
Yeah.
I love Rubens. So Alan and I share a passion for craft beer. And a funny story, I was in Colorado Springs at a speaking engagement, but this was back when it was Inland and SNPA. And whenever I go to a different city, I obviously do a little research beforehand and find out what the best breweries are. So I am sitting in a brewery on probably a Saturday afternoon prior to the event. And who walks in? Alan and his wife, right? It was you and your wife?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So we enjoyed some beers there. And then Alan was kind enough to give me a ride back to the resort. So
Wait a second.
I forgot about the ride. Yeah. We definitely share the craft beer love, though.
You're trying to tell me that three Midwest guys, one of them from Wisconsin, is supposed to be stunned that there's a beer connection?
well, Rubens, he
Good
held
point.
up that Rubens coaster. Rubens has some great beers, by the way. I know we're kind of getting off topic here, but I wanted to throw a trivia question at you,
I
Jim.
loved it.
So,
I loved it. I'll bone up on my trivia better next time. So let's talk a little bit more, if you don't mind, about the American newspapers and really Seattle Times, especially, and some of the initiatives they've been involved with too. Because I know there's another initiative, the Lab for Journalism Funding. Is that something you folks were involved with as well? I think LMA was involved in that as well.
Yeah, we're actually partnering with LMA in a program to, I can't remember how many participants there are, it might be 15 newspapers participating in kind of the alternate funding approach that we've gone through to support newsroom positions. So we have, and this has been going on now since I think 2011, we have four different, we call them labs, four different content areas that are being supported directly by either foundations or corporations or just well-heeled individuals here in the Pacific Northwest. So we've got one that covers education, and that's really trying to focus on the poor outcomes that we have in Washington State with public education, as well as the inequities within the public education system. We've got one for Traffic Lab, which prior to March was a big problem in Seattle, but not so much anymore. We have Project Homeless, which unfortunately is a huge problem for us here in the community. And then we just launched an investigative journalism fund to support. Ideally, we're trying to get up to 15 people. We've hired about 4 people now for the investigative journalism fund, and we've raised about $1.2 million so far, on our way to a goal of raising $2 million for that particular fund. So each one of those has assigned reporters, an engagement person to help with the community engagement, which we found really critical, as well as an editor. And it's been quite successful. And the investigative journalism support extra positions that we have, that we just added this year, really paid off during the pandemic and all of the social unrest and all of the issues that we've been struggling to cover. And it's really helpful to have that extra horsepower. Yeah, and so now we're working with LMA to kind of share our experiences, and as we try to help replicate that across the country in other newsrooms.
Yeah.
no, you folks are doing a real phenomenal job of growing your digital subscription base. And I don't want to get too tactical here, but I know Curtis Huber, you're a VP of consumer sales, marketing, circulation. Someone I am a fan of, have great respect for. You guys are doing such a great job. How are you attracting so many digital subscribers? Obviously, you have a Pulitzer Prize winning product. You probably have the state's largest newsroom. I'm probably answering my question for you, but
yes and yes.
Yes and yes. But how are you doing such a phenomenal job? And where are you at in terms of digital subscriptions? Give or take a few thousand here and there.
Yeah, so I just had our board meeting last week, so I know this. We're at 78,000 digital subscribers.
Wow.
Before the pandemic hit, we were probably under 50. So it has been absolutely phenomenal. And you mentioned Curtis Huber. One of the wonderful benefits of attending NICE conferences was getting to know Curtis when he was at another newspaper in the region. And out of the blue, he called me one day and said, "Hey, I might be thinking about making a move. Do you have anything?" And I was like, "Hell yes, we've got something. So get over here as quickly as you can." And he's been just the rock that has really, really helped us with the successes that we're experiencing. So a number of things. One is we invested pretty heavily in an e-commerce system a few years ago. So we have really we went from it was like a 24-step process to subscribe back in the days when we were trying to do it off of an old mainframe circulation CJ, I think it was Collier Jackson. Or, going back to the old days there. Clearly not designed for e-commerce because it didn't even exist when that stuff was created. So in 2016, we invested a lot of money, and we have, I think, a top flight e-commerce system, which has really helped with all that, eliminate all of the friction, much of the friction within the funnel itself. Great collaboration with the newsroom. We have a small but mighty 3-person product development department who's been really key with doing a lot of A/B testing. Back in the day, remember 20 years ago, we would make a decision to change something and you'd have to wait 3 months to see if, circulation went up or down. And you're trying to isolate one variable among 1,000. And, it was almost impossible. With the A/B testing capacity that we have now, it's been really, really helpful. So you really have informed decision making. We've got our newsroom that we have developed a tool that they can track specifically how many digital subscriptions their content influenced. So we have 3 levels of that influence. So if somebody read a story of yours and subscribed within 30 days, now mind you, that's a difficult one because they're going to read a bunch of different things. So many different stories can be getting credit for that particular digital subscription. Then the next level is, did you read something and subscribe within 7 days? And then the third is, did you read this story and go directly to subscribe digitally? So the newsroom's bought into that. Product department is really doing well. Our audience development people and our marketing departments work together really well. And it's been really successful. Our digital subscription revenue this year is up 40-ish%, 40+%. And it's, we're to the point now where about 70% of our total revenue comes from, we call it audience, print and digital subscriptions. So, if it were the old days where it was 30% and 70% was in advertising, we would be in a world of hurt right now.
Yeah. That's certainly a success story, having 78,000 digital subscribers. So, kudos to you and your team in Seattle. It's just an amazing story. Obviously, that starts with strategic thought leadership, and that's where you come into play along with your boss, Frank Blethen. Frank Blethen was recently named Editor and Publisher's Publisher of the Year. So I thought this would be a unique opportunity for you to maybe tell our viewership and listenership about who Frank is as a leader. And so the floor is yours. Tell us about Frank Blethen.
Frank is probably one of the most passionate people I've ever met for our industry. And that passion really extends not just to the industry, but clearly maintaining family ownership here in Seattle. He has been publisher since 1985 at the Seattle Times, and prior to that, he was at our paper in Walla Walla for a few years as publisher. He is really focused now on kind of the Save the Free Press initiative that we talk about, which is really trying to reimagine what our industry can look like, anticipating that some of these properties, and I think we're already seeing them, are going to get jettisoned off by some of the big corporations who have a lot of debt. And as they start to sell those properties, is there an opportunity to bring back some local ownership? So, he's been driving that for a year and a half or so. He is, 70, I can't remember, 75, I think it was in the E&P story that, I get emails from him at about 3 o'clock in the morning regularly. He's up at dark 30 and working 7 days a week. And, that kind of passion, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme because I get those 3:30 messages from our publisher as well. And Dennis Francis also, by the way, was editor and publisher of the year about 7 years ago. So that must be a trait between award-winning publishers.
Yeah, well, I got rapid eye movement at 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm not doing the emails.
It's funny you brought that up, Aaron, because I have that EMP sitting right in front of me to bring that up today. So congratulations to Frank and to the whole Seattle team. So Alan, like circulation professionals had done, you moved around from a few papers, right? From Corvallis to Eugene, we talked about it. Okay. And then you settled in Seattle and you've been there a long time. What, for lack of better terms, what put the brakes on that Seattle was the place you wanted to be?
Yeah.
And, you weren't going to, do the circulation guy moving around the country thing.
A host of things, both professional and personal. It's hard to live in Seattle and go anyplace else and think your quality of life's not going to go anywhere but down. And that might be, a bit jaded on my part, but certainly that's how I feel. The really important thing I think that's kept me here is I have had just a host of wonderful opportunities at the Times. And I always tell new employees here, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to being locally owned and independent. The disadvantage is that, you're not going to jump on corporate opportunities that are at one of the 30 other newspapers and, get on that whole merry-go-round that a lot of us were on for years. That's the downside. The upside is that when something needs to be done, it's us. You look around and this is who we got. So you get a lot of opportunities to get involved in projects that are kind of outside your normal scope of responsibilities.
Yes.
And I always encourage people to say, take every advantage of those opportunities because, it not only opens you up to learning and meeting and getting to know other people within the organization, but it really broadens your skill set. And I have had those opportunities. I've tried really hard to take advantage of them. And, I've never gotten bored here, that's for sure. So that's kind of interesting because it's been almost 30 years that I've been here and I still love getting up in the morning and going to work, as we do these days. But, and the other thing I will add is that there are really good people there, really smart people and really passionate people who are dedicated to the mission. And that comes from Frank Bluffin. And he talks about, we serve the community through quality journalism and it's about community service. It's not about how much money we're going to make. Certainly we need to make money, obviously, but that community service and that mission that we've got here, is pretty unique. And it's been something that, when I've had a few opportunities that have come up, I've weighed them and thought, nope, I'm sticking right here. And I haven't regretted any of them.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
I agree with your sentiments wholeheartedly. I work for a similar company that's small, medium-sized, private, and I think it allows us to immerse ourselves in a variety of different disciplines and departments that may not fall underneath our umbrella. I kind of call it forced immersion. I try to force myself into all different sorts of task forces and hit teams and special projects just so I can learn more about the business. So, Alan, I'm going to have you put your mentorship hat on. The majority of our listeners and viewers are going to be audience executives. And just give us your opinion for aspiring executives like maybe myself or a Troy Nide or a Jim Wall, or what type of skill sets should we hone in on if we have aspirations to follow a career path like yours?
I think that, certainly I think it takes strong relationship skills and strong communication skills, both written and verbal. I think that there's a level of analytics now that we all need that we didn't have 25 years ago, but that is more and more important now. The days of making decisions based on, we used to call it circulation gut, those days are fast leaving us, thank God, because we have other tools. And it's a challenge to learn some of those tools and those skill sets, but you've got to keep really maintaining that kind of cutting edge knowledge. And however you can do that, do it. Whether it's through official training or just practice. I think it's absolutely critical. And then the other thing I would say is you really got to be a strong team player. With fewer and fewer people around, compared to where we were 10, 15 years ago, we don't have a whole lot of, what do I want to say here? We don't have a whole lot of patience with, people who want to have the limelight on them and, all of those things. This is really about a team game, and it's absolutely critical in these reduced resource times to be a good, strong team player.
Well, you mentioned that 70-30 revenue split. So if you think about that for a second, the audience head has a larger seat at the table than they've ever had. So Curtis is extremely valuable to your organization. So I think as we continue to look for ways to generate consumer revenue, circulators and audience heads are more valuable than we've ever been to our organizations. That's a fair statement, right?
Yeah, definitely so. And I think the other thing I think circulation people bring into, because for the most part, circulators are just absolutely should be, and they have been focused on the customer. We're going to bust our tails to make sure that if we're late, we're going to mitigate the impacts as best we can to our customers. And I think that, the more insight you have to that customer and really understanding who they are, you can bring insights to the table for new product development to help serve those customers. We've got to be, we can't rely on the same old revenue streams that we've had for the last 20 years because it doesn't work. So what are the new products that we can do to, grow digital engagement of print readers? Are there new print products that we can bring to the market? I think that the circulation people who are so knowledgeable of the customers really bring a strong and valuable voice to the table for those conversations.
That's a great perspective. I mean, because they are literally at the doorstep of these customers, certain days, and that's fascinating stuff about the developing new products. So, are there new developed products on the horizon in Seattle?
Yeah, there's a couple that we're talking about. So we just launched desktop alerts earlier this year, and I think we got like 400,000 people that have signed up for various desktop alerts. We had a one-day sale a few weeks ago to tie into some of those new folks who signed up for those desktop alerts, and our record one-day subscription number was 500, and I think we did 1,400 in one day. So that's just one example of a little thing. You think desktop alerts, but the more information we can gather from non-readers and email addresses and whatnot, the better opportunity we have to try to convert them into digital or print subscribers. So we're looking at now. We just launched a new iteration of our space, and it's like Olive, but we're not using Olive anymore. E-replicas.
Okay, print replica. Yeah. Technavia.
Yeah, it jumped over. Synapse was a little further away there than I thought. But we're looking at additional content, different features. We're really focused hard on how do we grow digital engagement of print readers, knowing that at some point we're not going to be a 7-day print operation, and that I think is coming way quicker than people think. And the more that we can engage print readers digitally, the more likely we're going to keep them as readers when we pull the trigger and reduce print frequency. And I got to tell you, we've been talking about that for like 3 years, or working on it for 3 years at the times. It is not an easy thing to do. It is really, really difficult. So hopefully some of these new products will help us with that.
So I see you're working from home in your Four Seasons room, or I guess I should say in Seattle, it's probably a Two Seasons room, rain and drizzle. What have you seen from productivity with people working from home? Has it dropped at all? Do you see remote work continuing down the line even after we're through the pandemic? Just give us your thoughts on remote work.
So first, as far as the future, so we are in the process now. Our lease is up in our building the third week of January. And pre-pandemic, we were looking for about 65,000 square feet. And once we got into the pandemic, we quickly pivoted to realizing that we don't need that amount of space. So we have actually just leased one floor of our existing, we have 3 floors. We're going to go to 1 floor. And that's going to save us a ton of money. So we're going to have 3 groups of employees. We're going to have a group that works remote full time. We're going to have a group that comes into the office a couple days a week and works from home the rest of the time. And then we're going to have a group, obviously, that are going to be required to be there 5 days a week. And we're still kind of working through some of the details of who and how do we administer that. But that's our post-pandemic world. What we told our employees now, because we started to get questions about when are we coming back and how are we going to know it's safe and all of those things. We've told them that we're not going back until one of 2 things happens. 1, there's a readily available vaccine, or 2, there's a readily available effective treatment for COVID. And until either of those happen, we're not going back. So to the productivity on the main, we have not seen any decreased productivity. We just went through some training for our managers and supervisors about how do you manage a remote workplace, because this is all new to us. I do have concerns just for ad sales in particular. You don't have the energy of being in an office and somebody makes a big sale and everybody's high-fiving each other and celebrating. But it's hard to identify whether our losses right now are really, how do you identify whether that has to do with productivity or it's the productivity's down because of just the difficulty in reaching sales, decision makers these days. So, we're working hard to mitigate the impacts of potential drops in productivity. On the main, we haven't seen much.
I think somebody will, just like everything else, somebody will develop that way to share that success remotely. The office high fives, right? I mean, just like everything else, we had to adjust and we had to move. We've talked about earlier in this session about virtual conferences. Yeah, they're a little different, but they're getting better. The technology is getting better. The participation is getting better. The networking is getting better. So somebody will come up with something. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing, some of our folks are doing like virtual cocktail hours, and I mean, they're getting creative with how and when to get a Zoom call going. But I think to Aaron's point earlier, it's just not the same as sitting in a bar at a conference and having a couple beers and talking business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And really for the business partner too, who they come to these events, they want to meet new people and they want to drum up new business. And I think it's just too difficult to do that via Zoom. But hey, we're in this pandemic induced environment, and right now it's going to be virtual, like you said, until we get a vaccine. Don't want to get too off topic, but I guess Moderna came up with 94.5 efficacy on their vaccine. So hopefully we're on our way. So I'll be the first one in line. Stick me.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that.
I totally agree.
I just have a vision of these conferences that you go into the meeting room, get that shot, and you come running out to the reception.
Yep, I have my COVID card. I can attend this meeting.
So you could talk business.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, We asked Alan prior to the taping of this podcast what he thought of some of our other episodes, and he said they were a little lengthy, and he said keep it tight. So I think we're going to do that. We've been at it for a little over 40 minutes here, and I've enjoyed this 40 minutes. And Alan, we appreciate you taking time to meet with us and tell your story. And Jim, I'll throw it to you for some closure.
No, it's fantastic. Get to see Alan again. It's been a long time, and again, the old throwback machine. I remember meeting Alan in Eugene when I first was traveling the Pacific Northwest for Steel City, and I remember having a lunch with Alan when his child was on his first day of kindergarten.
Oh my
That we got
God.
together that day. So we kind of shared some of those paths along the way. So it's his professional and personal friendship has meant a lot to me over the years. His staff has met. He knows I speak highly of a guy that he worked with in Eugene, Oregon, Frank, who I still think of on a daily basis. And it's those kind of relationships that we get out of this business. So, Alan, we appreciate you coming. You had something you wanted to say, I think.
Yeah, I just want to thank you both for doing this. I think this is a great way to kind of, keep up those relationships as best we can. So I know you all are really busy and just can't thank you enough for doing this. I think it's really important.
Thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah, we appreciate the kind words, and that'll do it for episode 6 of Expressly Speaking, the industry podcast with Alan Fisco. Episode 7, stay tuned for some to be determined special guests. Until then, have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, be safe all.
Thank you.